This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joire.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Wednesday, January 17th, 2018. I have a very cool guest on today, and that is David Cogen. TheUnlockr himself is here. Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. This is super exciting. We haven't really interacted that much at conferences before, but the last few events that we've both attended, we've both been there. So I was like, hey, I want to have David on because I love your videos. They're so cool. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for being on.
Yep.
So we discussed some of the topics today, and it's going to be kind of recap post CES. Really, what are our thoughts? Like a week, or maybe less than a week now, but a few days after CES. What are our thoughts? And I want to start with kind of more general things, really, like before I dig deep into some discussions. But what do you think of CES this year?
It was hectic, like it is every year.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But yeah, it was cool. I mean, there was a lot of mentions of AI that were questionable that they were AI. I found that, it's a nice buzzword that everybody's throwing around this year. I did see, obviously, like Google Assistant was everywhere.
Yeah, that's kind of the theme for me. It's like Google Assistant, all the things was kind of my takeaway.
Basic, yeah, exactly. I agree with that. And and they're trying to catch up. Last year, it was Alexa, all the things. And I think so Google's kind of like, hey, let's try to play catch up with that. My Alexa's actually talking.
Cool. That's hilarious. Let's leave that in the recording. It'll be awesome.
Perfect.
Cool.
So there you go. So and this also was the first year that Google had a booth, right?
Well, not the first year. They've had booths in previous years. This has been a long time. Maybe I'm actually wrong because I'm thinking of Mobile Congress. Because Google used to have
at CES.
super,
I know it at Mobile Congress they did.
Yeah, you
I don't
might be
know.
right.
Yeah. So, but of course, that just shows they're like, we're trying to compete with that other system that I'm not going to say anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think they had they've had a presence at CES and so far that they've had execs and we've had meetings with them when I was at Engadget back in the day. I remember spending some time with who was it? The designer guy. I can't remember. But anyway, all I know is that at Mobile Congress, they used to have super awesome booths for years, and then they completely disappeared for a while. I'm wondering if they're going to be back this year. But yeah, this booth, I hate to say this, I saw it when I was in the big parking lot picking up my badge a day before, like the day before press day, so Saturday or something.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't even built, was it?
It was there. It was taking shape. It was rapidly growing, and you could really see what it looked like. But I didn't go at all during the event simply because I spent very little time at the actual convention center. I only spent a day there. And mostly,
you're lucky.
Well, I know, but mostly it was because I wanted to see LG and Samsung's booths, and I wanted to swing by Sony's booth to take hands-on with the X8 II phones, which, by the way, if you check the show notes on this show, you'll see my YouTube video about those two phones. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that too. But I'm just getting to the point that I didn't spend much time at LVCC. I did spend a lot of time at Sands, and of course at Mandalay Bay with its press conferences as usual. But I also had a short CS. I left the morning of Thursday.
Yeah. I was there all week.
Wow. Did you?
Another reason why I'm
Did you enjoy Vegas
still.
after the fact though?
So I did for a couple of days, but again, it was still like, for me, CES, a big part of it is just networking and seeing all of the people that, it's one of the few places where all the people we work with are all in one place at one time. So even after the show was done, the people that I didn't get to see, then I, scheduled to see and hang out with. So, but it was nice. I mean, honestly, I was just super excited to be warm. It was 5 degrees when I left New York.
Yeah.
And so like 40 and 60 was just like, I was like, shorts and t-shirts, let's do this.
Yeah, it was actually a slightly nicer weather CES. Other than that one day of rain, it was it was warmer than usual, to be frank. Usually it can get in the 30s and 40s in the daytime because it is a high altitude desert.
Yeah, true.
And I was actually, I remember CS Pass where I was literally wearing a hat and a scarf walking between the venues.
That's crazy.
And this one wasn't one of those. Although the deluges of rain that we had with the power outages, oh my God, that was insane.
Yeah, that was nuts. I was upset that I wasn't in it. Like I wanted to just be in that power outage just because it was so good for content. Like so many memes came out of that. Like the electronics show lost power. It was
I know.
It was just,
I was in the press room, and it didn't affect me much. I was in the center hall in the press room. Those were the few times I was actually on the show floor.
Yeah.
And I was. They had emergency power, so like 1 out of 10 lights in the the big neon arrays they had was on, so we could see where we were going and not like die. And then they had the Wi-Fi access points were still up.
That's weird because those are usually the worst.
Yeah, we did not have. We did not have wired connectivity. All the hubs had shut down because they're powered by by the local outlets. But somehow I think their Wi-Fi infrastructure is either on their generator backup network or on maybe each of them has their own battery reserve. And it was a long time. It was an hour and a half, right? The outage. Yeah. But it went by really fast. You know what it's like. You're in the press room, you're working, you're editing video, whatever you're doing.
Right, yeah. It's just like half a video edited.
To me, it felt like 10 minutes, but I know it was longer from reading all the reports. And honestly, I was so focused on what I was doing, and I was so much on the deadline that I was just like, I don't want to go out there and take photos. Plus, the rumors from the press room were like, oh yeah, it's nothing. There's like a couple of booths that are like down, and they're not important booths. They'll be back up. But I think people actually really were in Central Hall, like not in the upstairs press part. Right. Obviously, as you said, had a great content opportunity because wow, those photos.
There were so many videos and photos of just like CES after dark.
I know. It's so funny. Like it seems so apocalyptic to me. Like wow.
It's just weird because you think it's CES, like right, like they're meant to handle all that. But what it turned out it had to do with the rain. There was like leakage or something that happened and shut the power down. Because you're like, oh, the first reaction was all this electronics just shut down CES. That's how many things were here, But like,
no, it was the rain. That's why I brought it up, right? Because it turns out that so I don't know if you got invited by Google PR, but Google PR sent me an email a few days before CES saying, hey, we have this big booth and we want to show you all the great Google Assistant, all the things that we did at this show. They're very proud of themselves. And they said, we're going to have a little press event at 8 a.m. on whatever day it was, the day of the rain, the first day of the show. And it was a little too early for me to go, frankly. I was thinking about it, but I figured I could still get all the content from all the various manufacturers' booths. I didn't feel like I needed to just go to Google to get it all in one shot, especially at 8 in the morning. I'm not much of a morning person.
Me neither.
So I didn't go in the end, but then I get, as I'm later on in the morning, like maybe 9 a.m. heading out to do my day in the rain and stuck in traffic and all like everybody else, because, it very rarely rains in Vegas. I remember 2 years ago, it rained at CES and it was just a few hours and it was chaos. Yeah. Like not like a whole day like this time and not as much of a deluge. So, I was stuck in traffic for a while and I'm reading my email, catching up, and I see this email from Google PR, like from really early in the morning saying, sorry to do this last minute, but we have to cancel this morning's press thing because, of the weather. And then I found out later on from talking to various people, like the folks at Engadget and CNET that have trailers in the parking lot, that basically what happened is it rained so hard that the storm drains couldn't keep up. And so there was
it flooded.
Yeah, it flooded a little bit, not too much, not enough to cause damage to any people or equipment per se. But
not
the problem
pleasant to
is,
walk through.
Have you been to events and shows that they're not necessarily like trade shows, but like concerts and stuff? And have you ever looked around at how they do the power? Usually it's these big distribution boxes, and sometimes they use extensions where they clip two cables together. Yeah. And those junctions are generally raised, right? They put them on these wooden blocks or something so that in case it rains, they don't get flooded, that water doesn't get in there, even though they're waterproof connectors. They're designed to be outdoors. And so what I think happened is because it's Vegas and it never rains, right? They never raised anything. So there's dips and valleys in the parking lot, right? Because it's not perfectly flat. And so in some spots there were like 3 inches of water, 2 inches of water just accumulating. And these puddles had these, 308 volt, 3-phase, 60, 60 hertz, multiple amp power distribution blocks just sinking in there. And and I think some of them, just had their ground fault protection kick in and just shut down, which is what they're designed to do. But you can imagine how much chaos that would have caused. And I think that the biggest fear that the org had, like CES, the CEA, the people organizing, was that if somebody steps in one of those puddles and there's still a live connection, right, they're going to get electrocuted. So they actually cleared the whole parking lot earlier that morning, which is why Google had to cancel. Not really per se because they didn't have power or their booth was leaking. Although
but it was dangerous. And,
yeah. And then I heard from other people, I don't know, you can tell me what you heard, but I heard that literally buckets were being placed inside the convention center in various places. Yep. Some booth had to have tarps on them because the roof, like, this is crazy. This is one of the biggest convention centers in the world, right?
Yeah. Now, and it can't handle rain.
I know. The one in Orlando is one of the other biggest surface area-wise in the world. And it can't handle rain. But then again, you realize that convention center, like the core of it was built like in the 50s or 60s, you look really at photos of CES from 1969, like the first year, and 70s, and it's the same center hall. Like
nothing's changed.
Yeah, the posts and the same, and probably the roof is the same, and
there's more advertisements on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really need to worry about the rain that much, so they probably don't maintain. I mean, it's crazy.
Someone was telling me it was 100 and something days since the last rain at
130, yeah.
Right, like that's half the year.
Have you been before to CES? Yeah, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. So actually, though, it's funny because I've been doing this for like 11 years, right?
Right.
And this is my second CES.
Wow.
Yeah. I never went to any events. So I made a conscious decision the last couple of years to like go to as many as I could.
Do
so
if you can. I mean, be careful. It's a fine line. Like I travel about 150 days a year right now because of trade shows and events and things. You got to find the right balance. But at the same time, to me, it's all the networking and the meeting people in person and the meeting PR folks from all the various agencies and in-house PR is really awesome. You build much better relationships that way.
Yeah, totally. And then also it's the other content creators you meet too, right? Like it's funny because I've been doing this for so long. For a decade, I was kind of doing it by myself. Didn't really talk to anybody else about it,
Yeah.
So it's the amount I've learned just from other people like you and other content creators and in this last year has been incredible. So like that alone is worth going to these, at least to the big ones, right? Like CES, Mobile World Congress, and IFA is what I plan to go to. If you have to do two
in our business, in the mobile tech business, I think it's CES and Mobile Congress, and because those two, you're right, you end up basically you do your work and you end up, it's like fighting in the trenches with everyone else, right? It's like we all have our own battles, right? They're the same battle in a way because we're all trying to find good coverage and get everything done. We're all on the same team. But have you noticed how much sharing and love happens? A lot of people think that we're all like competitive. Oh, don't look at my screen right now. I'm writing this story and like I can't show you. No, we share and we show stuff and we understand that as long as we don't steal or paraphrase or do it like, and nobody does that stuff anyway. Everybody's well behaved.
Nobody would ever do
that. The point is that as long as we create our own unique content, and yes, sometimes we get tips. Like it's like that's how it works. Like if I find something super cool, I'm not going to hide it. Like I know of course I'm going to try to be first, but I'm going to share it with folks because it makes for better story for the readers and listeners. Like
I agree. We all have different perception. Like different. Viewpoints on all these things, so it's nice to, and most people do that. Like that's the other thing too, is like we're not competing in a way. It's like, oh, I only go to one place for the news. Like a lot of times people will go to multiple sources to read the same thing, and so in that respect, we are sometimes our biggest referral traffic, especially on YouTube. Like our videos always post up next to each other, right? So it's really interesting to see like most of my video views would come from say Mr. Mobile's videos and vice versa. So it's it's a lovely camaraderie and I think learn techniques from each other and stuff. It's
right. Great. And then once you've been at that press conference, that one crazy Samsung press conference where they had whatever madness on stage, it creates bonds. Like we'll reminisce. Do you remember that CES back in the day? It was crazy.
Yeah, I remember it rained and like they shut down the central hall. That was crazy.
And I think that's the thing. And I mean, I know that it's a lot less intense for me nowadays. Although I have to argue that as I'm getting a bit older, in my late 40s, it's a little harder for me to maintain the super high pace that I'm used to. But when I was at Engadget, it was so hard, so intense, so difficult, so hardcore that I literally have bled at trade shows. I have cried at trade shows. I have blood, sweat, and tears. Sweated a lot, of course.
Yeah.
And I think seeing other people having their struggles and trying to help them out. Like I remember I met Brad Mullen. Brad, who used to be at Engadget, who kind of did a lot of the phone reviews on under my wing there.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
I met him at CTIA in San Diego at the trade show one time, and he wasn't. This is before he worked at Engadget, and how we met was he's in the press room and his Dell computer died. Like right there, he's trying to write a story.
And it just crashed.
And so I said, okay, dude, I don't have a spare laptop to lend you, but here, it was just his OS on his hard drive. So I downloaded a build of Linux on a USB thumb drive. So he could boot off the USB thumb drive and at least get online and go on his website and post his stories or whatever. And this is the kind of stuff we do, right?
Yeah,
and this is like a decade ago. But the point is, I think that's the thing, that the reason a lot of us go to these trade shows. And I'm sharing this here with everyone because I think a lot of listeners just don't know. Like they don't know what the experience is like. And they've given me feedback on my last two podcasts saying it's really lovely to hear the actual insider stories, So there you go. What's your moment of CES? I mean, other than Google Assistant, all the things. What was the thing, and of course the power outage, what was the thing that stood out to you, even if it's just like an anecdote, something you met some celebrity, you saw something that just was like, wow.
I did like the Samsung Wall TV. I know everybody talks about it.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah. That was pretty cool. Because I didn't see it.
So tell me, it's a modular system, right? And uses LEDs instead of OLED, correct?
Yeah, correct. And so the modular part of it, though, is not because at first when they said that to us, and they didn't give us much information. I had to pry people for it, and even then I only got little tidbits. They're very secretive about what it is. They just kind of showed it off. But the modular aspect of it is not that you can make it different sizes, but their manufacturing process can. So you could essentially, they showed off I think it was 146-inch version.
Right.
But they only chose that size because it's the average size of a wall in the United States. They can make it any size you want. So any smaller and any larger. So I guess the idea being that this would be you could come in and custom order the TV using this technology. And that's what makes it modular, which is cool. And it was just, it was massive and looked great. The quality was really nice. I don't know the resolution. They didn't tell us. But it just was a really nice colors and, huge. So it was just impressive to see.
But my understanding was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they developed the smallest LEDs in the world so that they could cram them together closer so that they could make a higher resolution LED displays. Because, you go to concerts and stuff and you see these panels, they're basically 3 by 4 foot panels, and they're a bunch of dots. When you get close up, you can see they're tiny LEDs, but they're spaced out enough that you can't get to get a 1080p display. You need it to be 20 feet wide, right?
Right.
And of course, if you sit far enough, it looks great. But if you're right next to it, it doesn't look good. So, am I right to understand that they have packed them together close enough that you could potentially build a TV in your living room with this?
Yeah, that is the idea. I think I don't remember the name they had they had a proprietary. I don't know if it was micro LED or nano LED, something like that. But that was their name for it, and that is exactly what it was. It was these self-emitting LEDs that they could make small enough that it was a normal resolution, and they could just expand it to whatever size they need, which is kind of clever. So I'm assuming you're going to see these less in people's houses, but you could. I just think the price is going to be crazy. But you're going to see them more at the trade shows and other things. Samsung is going to, use these
for sure. B2B, it's funny because when I was at the press conference listening to this announcement, I really just thought that they had made a regular TV. I didn't really catch the modular part. I didn't hear the word, or it didn't register.
They didn't push it, honestly.
I thought that basically, the holy grail, OLED looks amazing because every pixel is independently turned on and there's black behind it. So when you have no light, you absolutely have no light. You don't have a backlight that interferes. You don't need to do what you see on high-end LCDs today with local backlighting and all these crazy techniques. You can just basically just turn on off pixels. The problem with OLED is it's an organic substrate, so it actually wears out. It's not like silicone. Normal LEDs are silicone and pure silicone, and they last forever pretty much. They can get fried if there's too much current or voltage. That's about it. The problem is it's really hard to make very small LEDs, and that's why OLED became a thing. And of course, the drawback is it wears out. You get screen burn-in and stuff if you display a lot of bright color in one area. And so to me, when the announcement at Samsung felt like we've made a TV that's like a regular size TV, like a 50, 60 inch, whatever, that is really expensive right now, but is eventually going to come down in price, that solved the wear problem by being real LEDs, silicone LEDs, and that we've miniaturized to a completely new degree, right? Basically, that's kind of what I thought they were doing. And I think they are to some extent, but I don't think the resolution is that the density is high enough of pixels yet to really compete with traditional LCD and OLED in the living room.
Right.
I think
this is
more
why
like,
didn't mention it.
Yeah, and this is more like, as you said, for this is a big step in pixel density for traditional LED modular wall-like size TVs. And I think that's kind of what they should have really said because so you saw it, but you mentioned 8K in your story. So what was the story behind that?
So I mentioned, that was a mistake. I mentioned 8K in a Twitter post. And then I redacted that. But because what it was they mentioned two things at the same time. And even in their press release, which is why everybody kind of jumped on the 8K thing, they also released an 8K TV, but it's not the same as the wall. So when a lot of us were talking about it, and even Samsung, it's felt to me like they were calling it an 8. So like it was just a miscommunication. But the other TV, which is an 85-inch 8K TV, that's what they were kind of releasing in the same breath.
Wow.
But that's a consumer television. That they wanted to talk about all day. The other TV, they didn't.
And did you see
the wall? They were just kind of like, look, it's a wall, and they walked away. Yeah,
was it at the booth? Did you see it?
Yeah, the booth was a pain to get into because of the wall. It was just crazy. But at they did like not a pre-briefing. It was kind of just like a party that they had where they unveiled the TV. That and the TVs, they had them both there, and so that was a little easier to go check out. So in my video, I do show both of them. But yeah, but again, no pricing or availability on either. So I mean, it's really cool that they got an 8K TV, and they use the word AI, but upscaling, so that even if you put like an SD, video in there,
fantastic.
It'll upscale it to 8K. Yeah. And they showed a demo of it and a regular 4K TV, and it definitely looked good.
Sweet.
Who knows what what they were actually doing, and I don't, it's not my own controlled test, but in their demo, of course, it was actually pretty impressive. So pricing will be a huge factor, but it's still cool that technology is going that way, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean 8K. There's no content yet, but if you see it, once you see it, you see the difference. It's pretty amazing. I remember seeing a sharp 8K TV like 4 years ago at CES, like a very much a early prototype, and it was just like wow, like
Yeah, it's impressive.
It is, but I think I think for me, what did it at Samsung's press conference was just to see like the silliness of the Bixby, all the things, like, the entire show is yelling in your ear, like the entire CS show is yelling in everybody's ear. Google Assistant, all the things. And Samsung is trying to yell over that with Bixby, all the things. And I'm like, guys, seriously, let's let it go. Okay. Like there's no doubt that putting that AI in appliances is a thing and it's the future. And, I'm not necessarily sure that all appliances need it, et cetera, but I know that it can make, it could certainly make some scenarios more, better, in our lives. The thing though is that it's interoperability that's going to make it work. And the key to interoperability to me is something that Amazon solved. I don't want to say the word because obviously, it's going to trigger mine as well here. But the A word.
Yep.
Amazon is got the assistant that's proved that a voice interface could unify all the platforms. Mm-hmm. That's, I think, what a lot of people are not seeing. I think you're seeing it, David. But I think a lot of people out there don't understand that it's not about AI per se. It's about the fact that, you have Nest, you have Philips Hue, you have all these like August Smart Lock, all these silos that were individual ecosystems like, Ring camera, all that with their own apps that you now you don't have to use their apps anymore. You can just talk to the assistant device, whether it be Google or Apple's even in the future when Siri gets better, and maybe Microsoft Cortana. Although I saw an article saying that Windows is going to get Amazon's assistant very soon, which means that so maybe Cortana is a dead thing. I don't know. We'll see.
I haven't seen that,
but the point is that I think these assistants are making a unified and very intuitive user interface for all of our smart devices. And the smart devices exist and they're here to stay. Whether you, like, as I said in the previous podcast, like two podcasts ago at CES, I said, I'm not sure I want a washing machine that's smart per se, because, it's really expensive. And my theory is that if you have that kind of money to spend on one of those washing machines, you probably don't do your own laundry. You know what I'm saying? You probably have somebody who does for you.
You send it out, right?
Or you send it out. And so then you don't buy the machine. Or if you have somebody who does it for you, they don't care about the AI because their job is to do laundry. So they're going to be monitoring it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But my point is that some things certainly have benefited. I think the fact that we can, lie in bed and say, to tell Google to turn off the lights is a nice perk. I mean, it's laziness. We used to be fine without it. But at the same time, I think everybody agrees that it's nice.
Yeah. No, I do. I agree with that. I think, and it's funny because it is something so small, but once you get used to it, you get so used to it.
I know.
And I've literally found myself in a hotel room being like, "Hey, that word, what's the weather? Oh, wait, no, you're not here."
Yeah, and
it's just like a habit.
It's like it's like Star Trek.
Yeah.
Computer, make me some tea. Earl Grey, hot. I don't know. I mean, we kind of live in the freaking future. Yeah,
it's the art imitating life, and that type of a thing. We're trying to get to that, and I think it's. I don't know. I like it, obviously.
I like it. I think it's
progressive
cool.
and a nerd.
So to wrap up back to what we were talking about, I think it's inevitable, like back to Samsung, it's inevitable that Samsung devices should all talk to one another and have some sort of AI, some sort of connectivity, some sort of, brains where, the I don't know, they can, I don't really know. I don't cook. So I'm sure that there's a reason for the dishwasher to talk to the stove in some way, but whatever. The point is that, while I'm skeptical of because the implementations so far haven't been great, but I think the assistants have really gelled the implementation into a really convenient and easy to use prospect. But to see Samsung push Bixby so hard, it's so tone deaf in a way. It's like, are you looking around to seeing what's going on? Like you don't stand a chance.
Right.
Nobody's gonna buy all the appliances from the same company. It's never gonna happen. That's not how people shop.
No, but that's how these manufacturers are doing. Like LG's doing the same thing with ThinkQ or Think, however you pronounce it, right? So it's their way of trying to carve out a bit of the market before there is a solid winner, right? But I think we all know that Google Assistant and the other one from Amazon have such a head start and are just so much easier to integrate into all these things. Like. It's just not. Yeah, it's a losing battle. But I think they're going to keep trying until that's. Oh yeah,
and I get that. And I think I'm not as offended with LG because LG is saying like we put Wi-Fi in everything. Yeah. And we have one app that controls it all, so it's nice if you have all LG stuff. But they didn't say like we have our own assistant. We create our own assistant. You have to use our own assistant. You know what I'm saying? They just said no. We put Google Assistant in everything. They're smart. Whereas I didn't see Samsung support Google Assistant and our friend, the A assistant from Amazon. Yeah. The point is, assistants were strong at CES, and Samsung certainly was kind of like. Drumming in their own beat, and I was like, you guys are crazy. Yeah. But what stood out? Like, did you see, something you just kind of walked randomly and you were like, oh my God, like I've heard of this. This is great. What is this?
Yeah. So there was one thing that it was interesting. I was walking through South Hall and I saw a giant crowd outside of a booth and I was like, all right, what's going on? And I walked over, I can't remember the name of the company. I'll think of it in a minute, but basically it's this company making, for lack of a better word, they're fans that have LEDs on them, and when they spin, the LEDs can actually light up in however they're programmed.
Words. Yeah.
Yeah, not just words though. So what it could
entire
do,
images. Yeah.
It would, and so they were telling me that any 3D content you have, regardless of whether it's like a 3D movie or a piece of animation or a 3D graphic, if you give it to their system, it can display it on these fans. And they had a bunch of them like connected together in a matrix, and it was just impressive looking. Like you don't need any glasses. It just looks 3D. And they were actually the people that worked there. I was talking to them and they were like, yeah, we actually watched like a 3D movie on this, the other day. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
I've never heard that done with 3D.
So that's what was so cool about it.
Because, on bicycles, we've seen people like do bicycle wheel displays. Like they play entire YouTube videos while riding a bicycle, which is really cool. But 3D?
So it's this, but in 3D. I have no idea how it works other than the LEDs are spinning. I don't... But like, I actually posted a video of it really quick. And of course, that doesn't do justice because you can't see how 3D it is. But you can kind of tell. I posted it on my Twitter, and everybody was just like, what? And it had a crowd around it every time I walked by it. And it was, it's some company they're just doing their thing. And I guess it's used for marketing, kind of like they want it to be used at booths. Go figure, right?
Yeah, well, good place to be, right?
It worked. Yeah, it worked. It got me to stand there and stare at it for a while. It was great.
Anything else that you just completely ran across randomly that was just like, whoa?
The mech. Did you see the mech from, I think, Furion? Oh, God. So this thing, apparently, like, people were it's a giant mech with like 4 legs, and you climb into the center of it and you can obviously control it. But the point of making this was that they want to actually start like robot races. They want to start like a new sport.
Wow.
So that was obviously impressive. Just because
I love how we're doing like robot and drone esports. Not anymore because they're real sports, but they're
physical, right?
AI driven, I guess, or remote controlled to some extent.
And I think it's great. It's going to help push, in the same way that like Formula E, for example, pushes, electric vehicles. If there's enough marketing money behind this because it becomes popular, it helps these companies move forward. And I think that's like the part of all of these sports that we don't really think about as much, but like they push the industry forward when we have, motorsport or whatever robo-sport. I don't know what you would call these.
Robo-sport. I love it. No, I agree with you 100%. That's cool. I just wanted to go touch back on a couple of things we talked about already. The Sony phones. I just want to bring up that there is my video in the description here below. I mentioned it on the last podcast. I got to play with the XA2 and XA2. What was the Ultra or Premium? I think it's Ultra. At the Sony booth, and they're just mid-rangers. One thing I didn't catch in my hands on because I was so busy looking at the camera and my settings rather than the actual phone was that the bigger one has dual cameras in front. And I'm wondering if it's just, portrait photography in front or if they're actually doing some sort of face authentication. It's typical, like these big companies launch these products. There's very little support and knowledge about it amongst the people at the booth, right? So, and I haven't really had time to read the press releases or whatever, but it's like, now I'm kind of curious because I'm like, okay, one of your mid-range phones has a dual camera setup in the front,
Yeah,
so
I imagine
did you
it's
see
a
them?
portrait thing, but... No, I didn't actually get a chance to see Sony's booth at all, unfortunately. So yeah, I didn't get to see him. I'm going to watch your video.
I mean, don't worry, you didn't. Thanks. You didn't miss too much. I'll be honest. I mean, like they're mid rangers, right?
Yeah.
And they're not even 18:9 aspect ratio. They're just like your standard, big boxy Sony. Yeah. Not big because one of them has 6-inch display, so it's pretty big. But there are these, the boxy design that we're used to from Sony, and they have
they refuse to change that design.
Yeah, they have big bezels, top and bottom mostly. But what's interesting about them, other than the dual camera on the bigger one, is that the fingerprint reader's in the back, which is a first for Sony. It's not on the power button, and obviously not under the display, which we should talk about. But I also want to quickly mention, as we're talking about phones, if you go in the show notes and see more videos, there's the Cat rugged phones I got to play with. They were announced like in, I think, September and November respectively. The S41 and S31. I don't know why I keep saying X about these phones. They're S. Did you ever play with any of their phones?
So not those two, but I did. They actually did let me borrow the S60.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I reviewed that one.
I brought it to Burning Man.
Of course you did.
Because I thought that was the perfect place to test it.
So you want to exactly, you want to know what was crazy is 2 years ago, so I'm staff at Burning Man. Well, I shouldn't say that because nobody's supposed to be staff at Burning Man.
Right.
We're all volunteers and we all participate and all that. Yeah. But anyway, I do help manage the coffee shop at Center Camp. And spend a lot of time there and stuff. And so, I wanted to bring the S60 to Burning Man. That's 2 summers ago, and I completely forgot to pack it. Because thermal imaging was the thing for me. I mean, I have a FLIR
I use that.
add-on
really
camera. Like I have the FLIR one, the one you can plug into your Android or iPhone. Mm-hmm. But I felt that having a rugged, dust-proof phone that had decent specs with a FLIR camera built in would make a lot of fun. So what did you do with it at Burning Man?
Yeah. So it was easy to find parties because usually like at night you would just find where all the heat was coming from. Yeah, it was funny. And of course, like everybody around me got a kick out of it because we were using that, how hot are you and how hot is this? And, just messing around with the FLIR camera. But it was good because actually, so I've only been to Burning Man once, which was not this year, like not past year, but the year before. And that's when I brought it. And so it was interesting because we had cell signal, which I was always told you don't have.
Yeah, usually. That's unusual. It's been getting better too every year, which is kind of what?
Which is a good and a bad thing, I think, depending on who you ask at Burning Man. I liked it because it was, my connection to the outside world, and I went alone. Like I didn't know anybody.
Oh my God! You didn't even go with season burners. That's hardcore.
So I knew. So my cousin works for the radio station. So I knew him. But I didn't he likes to be mysterious, to be like a jerk. So he basically just didn't tell me anything. I packed as if it was the end of the world and just showed up.
It's a good idea. At least you were prepared. The worst is when people pack like they think it's going to be a weekend party.
No.
And then
I literally had jugs
trouble.
of water. I had beef jerky, anything that would not. I had solar panels.
Of course.
It was a great experience. It was super uncomfortable. But I feel like that's how you grow and learn and change, right? So anyway, so that was it. And I brought that phone. It was perfect. Like I couldn't have thought of a better phone to bring with me.
I mean, the fact that you were, that you had somebody that helped you. Well, maybe they didn't really help you, but somebody that at least you knew that was that worked at BMIR, the radio station, means that you had an in a way. So you probably had easier access to power, and if you ran out of water, you would have potentially some other people.
Somebody could save me. Yeah. Totally.
I've been going to Burning Man since 2004, and I've been working volunteering, whatever you want to call it, being actively involved with the organization over the last 10 years or so. And particularly the coffee shop at Center Camp. And, it is like that. I still bring all the same things. Like I'm ready for the apocalypse every time I go.
In case.
And now I bring my camper van, which is a little more comfortable than a tent. And I camped in a tent.
It was horrible.
I camped in a tent for 12 years.
Oh, jeez.
So I know how it is. It was a very comfortable tent. We made the best of it. We had, a futon in there. We had a nice oriental rug in it, and we dust everything out, and we'd cover the bed with a tarp so that when there was dust coming in, because dust will get into the tent, as you know, no matter what you do. We would cover the bed so they wouldn't get dusty, etc. But the camper is a big upgrade for sure.
Oh yeah. If I ever go again, it'll be in a camper.
Yeah, the thing is, though, that, I think that I end up bringing back half my food and stuff now because, since I work there or I'm heavily involved as a volunteer / manager, I have access to other things that I don't end up using my own. But it's interesting because, the communication infrastructure at Burning Man has evolved drastically since 2004. When I went the first year, most lights were still powered by bulbs, not LEDs. LEDs were an electroluminescent wire, L wire, was starting to be very popular, but they were very expensive still. And so people reserved them for special things, if they had a theme camp and they wanted to decorate the entrance, or if they had a bicycle and they wanted to make it all super cool, or an art car or something. But they didn't do it, they didn't use it for everyday things. Like your camp light and your flashlight would probably still be like a mag light with a halogen bulb on it or something, powered by good old batteries that would not last the event. Yeah. But now everything is LED. Like everywhere you look is LED. LEDs are so cheap you can do LED all the things. And of course, solar panel, and people do. And solar panels, as you know, are super cheap and very efficient now. So it's solar panel all the things too. Yeah. But in terms of communication, what's really changed is, when I first went, we bought these general public radio service, GRPS, whatever it's called. The you don't need an FCC license to use the radios, Yep. Two-way radios. We use those to communicate when we wanted to find each other because nothing worked up there.
Right. I was texting people.
I mean, there were pockets of Wi-Fi back in 2004 if you know the right people in the right places, you know, but there was, even the organization itself had very limited internet connectivity, just for like Media Mecca and a few other places. But now, obviously, you know, the backhaul, the microwave connection to Reno is much higher bit rate than it used to be 15 years ago, and so the connectivity is much better for the organization and the various entities like the cafe and BMIR and Media Mecca and all that. So if you get on Wi-Fi, if you can get on Wi-Fi because you know someone or whatever, or you work there, you're pretty well connected now. But there used to be a time when it was just like you couldn't even load images; it was just text. You know, you could do like an email, you could read the tweets, but you could see like placeholders for images. And then in the last 3 or 4 years, what's happened is, they set up cows, you sell on wheels, right? For the workers before the event. Cause I go for about 3 weeks total time. I spend about 10 days there before the event. I spend the event there, and then I spend a few days after the event. And so because there's a lot of people pre-event that, that's their livelihood. They help the org set up the thing, so they want to be in touch with their families and friends. So they expect cell phone coverage. So they set up these sell on wheels, and connect them to the backhaul. And so pre-event for the last few years, all of us have had pretty decent LTE connectivity if you're on AT&T and Verizon. If you're on T-Mobile, you're roaming on AT&T and they throttle you significantly. If you're on Sprint, you're roaming on Verizon and they throttle you significantly. But AT&T and Verizon both have cows, and it works. But what's happened now is that the capacity of those cows has improved so much that they used to turn them off during the event completely. So you'd lose cell phone coverage during the event if you were working there. And now they leave them on, and somehow they're holding up mostly. There are peak times when they don't work because everybody's trying to be on. Yeah. But you went at a time that, like, if you had gone 10 years prior, like, forget it. You would have the phone would have said no signal from the time you left I-80 to the time you got to the playa.
The dust. Yeah. Well, and it's the thing about that too, and obviously, like, we're talking about Burning Man a lot, but it's fine. Like, the other thing too that impresses me so much is, like, it becomes the third largest city in Nevada for like a week, and all of the technology that, like, is used to, like, build it, and, like, it's impressive. And even artists go out there. It's just crazy. So, like, even from a technological standpoint, like, Burning Man is a very impressive thing.
Oh yeah, people push the envelope all the time, and a lot of stuff gets tried there. You know that I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but when I was at Engadget, I used to still take the time off and go, and I didn't go to IFA. I've never been to IFA as a tech journalist simply because it's always when Burning Man happens.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And,
we talked about that.
And so one year they built their own GSM network from open source software and hardware at Burning Man. They got an FCC license to do it, to test it. Great. And basically, since there was no other cell signal, this is like almost 7 years ago, there was no other cell signal during the event because they turned off the cows. And back then, the cows were very limited in their ability to provide service to workers before event anyway. But basically, any phone that had a SIM card in it, didn't matter what the SIM was, would be able to connect to a network with the, like, instead of saying T-Mobile or AT&T on your screen, it would say 101. And 101 would provide you the ability to text other people on that network.
Got it. So
not to text to the outside world, but any device that connected to that picked up the cell signal would register itself, and it would see it as a regular cell network, and it wouldn't be able to get data on it. They blocked voice call functionality, so if you tried to call, it would just drop the call, but texting worked, and we used it. It was so cool.
That's
it was
impressive.
solid,
like,
and
to
it
make
worked.
Your own network.
I visited their tent. I visited their camp and their tent, and I saw their gear. It was like, a bunch of rack mount Linux servers, like, and they basically, it was 2G GSM. Like, they were able to, like, there's an open source reverse engineered GSM stack for Linux. That's what they were using, and then of course they're using the power amps and RF radios and all that other stuff you need, and they had a big antenna mass too, and that was all sanctioned by the FCC. But they did it for a year or two, and then they stopped, mostly because people were heading, like, 3G was going to be the next thing, and they there's no open
They were
source
like, we're not doing
3G.
that.
You know, like the encryption is much strong on 3G and LTE.
Yeah,
So
of course.
that, you know, essentially to open source GSM, you have to break the encryption, right?
Right.
So they reverse engineer the encryption system for 2G, but I don't think hackers have. And I'm saying hackers in the white hat, you know, legit hacker kind of wording. I don't think they've managed to reverse engineer the other stacks, and I don't think those are. They're not. You have to pay license to the GSMA or whatever for them. Anyway, the point is, they didn't break any laws. They did it all legit through FCC and everything, but it was an experiment. And you know what they were able to do? They turned into a business, because now they provide, they build tiny cell networks for tiny islands in the world
that's amazing.
Are like their own independent state islands, you know, that just don't have the money to, you know, get service from a big carrier. And they connect them to the backbone, to the internet, and then generally by microwave or satellite, and then they give them cell phone connectivity. It's very cool.
Amazing. Yeah, and you know, and proven in the desert.
Proven in the worst possible place on Earth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this, I guess, is the idea, right? If they could do it there, they could do it in, like, you know, an island anywhere else, right?
I think that's what they were going for.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, so I don't know how we got from talking Burning Man. This is what my show is all about, segues. We got to talk about Burning Man because we talked about the S41 and S31. Yeah. So go check the video on my channel. Go check. I'll link to you. You have an S60 video on your channel?
It takes place at Burning Man.
Great, awesome. And I'll link to my S60 video as well. The S60 is an older phone now. It's 2 years old, but it's still pretty good specs. The display is a little dated, but you know, Snapdragon 625 is not too bad. And it was a cool phone when I tested it. I have they're sending me an S41, so I'm looking forward to playing with that. No FLIR on that though, but it's MediaTek 8-core, and it has a 5-inch 1080p display, which is a huge upgrade, because the S60 and the older cat phones had 720p 4.7 inch, and 4.7 inches today is a small screen. Yeah, it's painful. So but let's talk quickly about. There's a couple of things I want to touch on real quick. So we talked about the cat phones, talked about Sony. I also want to mention that I mentioned this in the previous podcast. The Lenovo made a 180-degree VR camera called the Mirage. There's a hands-on in my YouTube as well. I'll put it in the link. And let's talk about Project Linda real quick. Mm-hmm. I know that's one of the things you got to play with at CES. Definitely. What's your thoughts?
So, I mean, it's cool. I think it's a cool concept. I mean, but we've seen other companies try to do this and it not work. But I think Razer and their quite fanatical fan base would actually participate in something like that. If they went out and got a Razer phone, they'd probably also, depending on the price, be happy to buy the Linda. The thing is that, you know, the project is the key word here. Razer does this every CES. They come up with like a project, but it doesn't always come to fruition, right? So, and in my mind, I kind of feel like it's their way of making sure they're in the headlines every CES, and it's clever and it's brilliant because they do like last year. What they do, I remember the name of the project, but it was like the 3-screen laptop. Right. So
I can't remember what it's called.
Valkyrie. I don't know. But anyway, so they do this every year. And it's quite smart from a PR and a marketing standpoint. Will it actually come and be a real thing? I'm not sure. But it's clever for them, and they sit there and they do this. They go, here's what we're going to make if you guys like it, and then they just sit back and wait to hear from people. So maybe if enough people with Razer phones say I'll buy this, then it'll happen.
That's a pretty small audience.
But that's what I'm saying, right?
But I mean, Razer would pull it off. You're right. They could make it happen.
They could make it. Yeah, they do absolutely
this.
Could.
Yeah. I think it was really cool, but I still and as much as from a hardware point of view, it's the best implementation I've ever seen. Absolutely.
Agreed.
But and by the way, I tested this. The Pixel 2 XL fits perfectly in there. Like it's exactly the same size. Yeah. That's funny. And I was able to have the connector slide in and everything, except that it didn't. The display didn't wake up because I guess you need some special software or something to make it work. But it's a software issue at that point. So it's not just, anyway, there's a tweet of mine with a photo of my Pixel 2 XL in there.
I like that.
and it's awesome. But the thing that strikes me, as much as I think that this is the best hardware implementation ever, the software is still going to suck, right? I mean, that's the problem that I've had with DeX and even the Huawei phones connected to a display. Is that you still have to deal with Android not being optimized as a desktop OS. And sure, the DeX stuff is a big improvement, like, all the copy and paste commands work and alt tabbing and all that. And I don't know if the Razer will do that, but I'm sure they have the software chops to do it. It's really all going to depend on the implementation and the software, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And if, and as Android matures or Chrome OS and Android merge further into the future, and, there's all that talk of whatever it's called, Google's new OS they've been working with. What's the name of it?
I can't remember.
You know the one I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
I'm blanking on it. But anyway, the point is that, it's eventually there's going to be a time when I think we'll be able to dock our phones and actually get very productive. Yeah. In the same way as David Ruddock used a Pixelbook exclusively at CES to do all his work. Congrats, David. I love my Pixelbook, and I'm very close to being able to use it and replace my Mac completely. The big challenge right now is audio editing for the podcast and video editing for my videos. But I think that with a good audio and video editor Android apps, I could probably use the Chromebook fully. I love the Pixelbook. I think it's phenomenal. I use it almost as my primary computer, and I'm not surprised David was able to pull it off. Hat tip to him for finding that watermarking software, because that's, to me, the biggest obstacle is watermarking images and stuff. So yeah, anyway, as a segue, I'm just saying that I think it's going to improve, but if Razer's Project Lina becomes real, I'm really hoping Razer puts the effort into making the desktop experience as close to Chrome OS as possible. Yeah,
well, what they're using right now is they're using a third-party app, and so Razer kind of has been known to do that, because even the Razer phone itself is using Nova Launcher, which is a third-party popular app in the Play Store. Right. So they're using, I wish I was just about to look it up, but I can't remember the name of it. But if you Google this, you'll find it. Anybody listening, but it's basically a third-party app in the Play Store that you can use on any Android phone. So I wonder actually if you installed it on your Pixel when you put it in, if it would have registered.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it would work. In fact, I think that most phones that support DisplayPort, MDP DisplayPort should work.
Totally.
I think the fact that the Pixel didn't show an image on it was odd to me. Yeah. Maybe I needed to reboot or something. I don't know. Yeah. The point is that I think it's trivial to make it work. Right. It's not like it's blocked by Razer or anything like that. It's none of that. So to me, the implementation is going to matter, though.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, that app's been around for a bit, but I didn't really get a chance to play with it too much because, of course, like the things that they gave us were not, final production, obviously.
Of course not.
They were a little glitchy and whatever, but it's because it was just a proof of concept. But yeah, so like I agree with that entirely. Like I would need it to really function well, and also the price too, like, because that's my big problem with the Pixelbook. I love that thing. I think it's amazing, but for $1,000, it's expensive. So that for something that is literally, is Chrome OS. And to me, like, Chrome OS is meant to be something a little less expensive. It's supposed to be a less expensive alternative to a laptop, in my mind.
I agree, but I think if you can start to ditch your Windows or Mac, machine, then maybe $1,000 is not unreasonable. If you want the thinnest, lightest convertible with a hinge, meaning a real keyboard, real trackpad. And this is the thing I love about the Pixelbook. The trackpad and the keyboard, particularly the keyboard, is probably the best keyboard I've ever touched on any device ever. Totally. And the only gripes I have with the Pixelbook, I love the lightweight, I love the size, I love the thinness. The only gripes I have, battery life is unbelievable. My only gripe so far is the bezels, like large bezels. I kind of understand it when used as a tablet. It's nice to have places to hold it without tapping anything, but I want bezel-less on that as much as possible.
Yeah, same. We're all used to that now because of all the phones.
But I love the industrial design. I think it's super sleek.
Totally.
And
it's a beautiful machine.
It's unreal, like fanless, and it's not like a mobile processor. It's not crappy. Yep. Like it really moves as a Chrome OS machine, which, so far a lot of fanless machines have not done. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. It's for me, Lou, I'm the same problem that you have, right? Like I need to edit videos. And so for me, it'll never replace that.
So one last thing.
But you're right. Like if it's a writing thing, I like it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you can get a lot of work done. Of course, that assumes internet connectivity, although you can do some offline work with Google Docs and stuff. But I mean, look, the thing is that, I've been a big fan of Chrome OS since day one, and I've seen the potential. Being able to just power wash a device and hand it to someone else, and they log into it, and all their stuff is there, is amazing.
Yeah. No, it is really cool.
And me upgrading my Pixel, my Chromebooks is just trivial. I log out of one, log into the other, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like that's the future. Like updates happening in the background and being completely seamless, all that good stuff. Yeah. I think a lot of people haven't experienced that, David. Though that's the thing. Like a lot of people like knock the Chromebooks because they haven't used them and don't understand the vision and how much better it's become and how much of a productivity tool it can really be. And I think David just proved it to the world, and kudos to him. I'm too lazy. I know I can do it. I know I can make a workflow happen that let me edit audio and video on my Pixelbook, and I need to get on that, because it'd be so nice to be freed of, device hardware completely, in the sense that if I lose it, I just buy another Chromebook, log in, and I'm back to go, ready to go.
Yeah, totally.
So I want to talk really about one more CS thing before we talk about the Moto leaks, because those Moto leaks are really interesting. But I want to talk about Huawei, AT&T, what happened to the entire Mate 10 Pro fiasco, at CES. I want to say fiasco. It's not Huawei's fault. I want to make it clear. I love the Mate 10 Pro. It's one of my favorite phones of 2017, probably in the top 5. And, as you know, there are strong rumors that it was going to come to AT&T and even potentially Verizon later this year in 2018. And I think it was very clear that Huawei was gearing up to make that announcement at CES. Instead, they announced that it will be available unlocked for $799. Is that right, David?
Yep.
Yeah, for $799. I mean, it's pretty high-end phone, so don't balk at the price. It's worth it, in my opinion. But that's it's available unlocked in the US. But they had to pretty much cancel everything else, because rumors are, and I think it's been pretty much confirmed now, that US Congress lobbied AT&T to drop this phone because of their fear of Huawei having some spyware in there. How Huawei is very heavily backed by the Chinese government company, as we all know. And I think it's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, why would they even have any spyware in there? Like, if they're trying to enter the US market, I mean, they're the number 3 phone maker in the world, first of all, right? They're not a small entity that's just trying to, they're not a OnePlus trying to make it, in the big world of phones. And even OnePlus, as we know, is backed by a bigger entity. But I'm just saying they're huge. And yes, in the past they've done some shady things, but this is a long time ago. And to conclude that any devices that they sell in the US would be spy devices is kind of ridiculous. What do you think? Yeah,
I think we live in paranoid times. I think
no shit.
Right?
Exactly, right?
So I think this fear thing is just getting to a lot of people, and I mean, I'm not a big fan of it, obviously. But I think you're right. I think and to play devil's advocate, there were some things that have happened with like ZTE, where they lied to they violated the U.S. Iran
but look,
sanctions.
ZTE is still being sold all over the place.
Correct.
By Metro PCS and
I
Cricket
agree.
and stuff. And Huawei, in fact, sells a whole bunch of devices that are low end. So
I agree.
blocking them at the high end doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense to me. And so, again, to play devil's advocate, like, some things have happened, but like it makes no sense to me to block these higher end phones, right? Because Huawei, if they're trying to actually make a splash in the U.S. market, they have a lot to lose. Could you imagine if they got caught?
Oh, I know, exactly.
That would be the end of them. And so, like, I don't know. I don't think it makes any sense to blacklist them, and I don't know, because all I've heard is rumors as well, right, about the government. I don't know if they lobbied them, or like somebody nudged somebody and was just like, this is a bad idea, or if because there is apparently a bill that started January 9th that hasn't been passed yet, but it's basically trying to get any equipment powered by Huawei or ZTE, or any telecommunication services provided by such entities, or equipment or services produced or provided by an entity that is the head of a relevant agency that might have ties with a foreign government. Right? So this is a thing they're trying to pass right now, and I don't know if AT&T just kind of knew that and was like, we're backing off until this gets solved. Do you know what I'm saying? But like, again, all of that is this fear thing that I'm not a fan of.
No, I agree. I mean, we live in crazy time, but it's crazy to me because Huawei's number 3 phone makers. They make some of the best phones. Consistently have made some of the best phones on the market in the last 3-4 years. I mean, they always have, but the software was always a bit of an impediment. And I feel like in the last 2 years, the software has really taken a huge step forward. It's gotten a lot better. And if you skin it just a little bit with like Nova Launcher or whatever,
Nova fixes it.
Google Now Launcher or whatever, you're totally happy. You're a happy camper. And the hardware is awesome. It's legit. it. Leica cameras on there are super, super great. I mean, it's hard to beat the Pixel 2 XL, but whatever. Right. The point is that they're super competitive phones, and I think they would help the customers in the US have more choice. And the only way they're going to get successful in the US is not by selling Unlock like they have so far, and like, OnePlus has and other manufacturers. It's by partnering with a carrier and being on the shelves of AT&T and Verizon. And there were rumors, I think, again, David Ruddock here, breaking all the scoops. There were rumors that indeed Verizon was likely to have something in the works with Huawei a little further down the road, and that's also been kind of crushed.
Right.
So that's really unfortunate. I mean, it's interesting to me. I don't know, were you at the Huawei press conference?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, I had to leave early for an appointment I had, but I read it online later that the CEO can ad-libbed right at the end and kind of had a little bit of a rant about it.
Yeah.
About his frustrations. I think he was very diplomatic from what I read. Yeah, I mean, he ranted a little bit about how this came to be, and you guys have to understand. Like, when I say you guys, I should say folks listening right now. Like, this happened. Apparently, all this happened a day or two before the announcement. So they had to change their entire CES strategy, and the keynote probably had to be changed significantly. And
along with any graphics or anything else they had.
As much as I want to be mad at AT&T for caving in, I mean, it's Congress, it's the FCC. They have an SEC license. They have a lot riding on this. If it does turn out that Huawei did something or does something, and they've got the phone, can you imagine what position that puts them in? So
totally.
Chickens, yes, but at the same time, sometimes you have to make the right strategic decision for the long-term viability of your business. Right. So I can kind of see that. But I just think the whole thing really stinks, and as you said, it reflects on the state of the world, the state of this country right now, which is really sad. I really hope that Huawei that can be worked out. Maybe it'll take a few more years, but we need these phones in the US, not just unlocked. We need these phones in stores. People right now are overwhelmingly buying either iPhones or Samsung Galaxies, and look, they're great. They're all great phones. You're not buying crap phones, but LG is not even on the table, when I think the V30 is one of last year's best phones.
Yeah, it was a great phone.
And et cetera, et cetera. So LG is not in a position to really move the bar as much as Huawei, because Huawei is so strong in the rest of the world.
Right. So
having at least a choice of three, Apple, Samsung, and Huawei, for the average US customer, I think would be a better thing than, you're going to say, well, they have other choices. They can buy an HTC U11. And I'm like, come on, who buys an HTC U11? No offense to HTC. I love that phone. But have you seen one in the wild?
No. And a lot of that also comes down to marketing, right? Like, Samsung and Apple are marketing machines, and they have the money to do so, right? Huawei does too, is the thing, right? And I think that's what positions them a little bit better than these other companies like HTC and LG, right? Huawei is huge. Like, when you look at their revenue, they're a huge company. And so for that, they can have the celebrities and, which they did announce with Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot, yeah.
Thank you. And then
I think that's what it is.
I think so too. I'm not sure. But that was actually part of their thing, was like, you can't pronounce Huawei. You also can't pronounce my name. It was like part of their little thing, which I thought was clever. Kudos to their team.
That was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was funny. But anyway, like they're in a position, I think, more so to your point, that they could actually put some marketing dollars behind these things and actually put them into more hands of people. But the truth is Americans buy phones subsidized, or we buy them from the carriers with a payment plan. We don't go necessarily, the vast majority, to Amazon and buy a phone outright for $800. It just doesn't happen. So it's a huge blow to them. And so, I mean, on the other side of this, though, at least they are in Best Buy. They are on Amazon. Best Buy is probably a bigger deal for them.
I mean, and you can buy them subsidized that way, right? Best Buy will subsidize a phone for you.
Right, but I think your average person just doesn't.
Amazon has certain plans.
Yeah. Like, if you could get
it's not the
advertising version, right?
Yeah, the average person is not going to walk into, go to Best Buy or even go on Amazon and buy a phone with a plan subsidized that, they need to be, like, they walk into a store and, whatever sales rep tells them is what they buy, right? Unless they're invested in Apple already, and then they're going to buy an iPhone,
Right, exactly. Right. And it's the price, too, is part of it as well, right? Like, it's an $800 phone. And don't get it wrong. It's hardware wise, it's on par with those other $800 phones.
Oh,
but it's a brand no one's heard of. They have no brand equity in the United States. And so for me to tell somebody, hey, go buy this phone you never heard of for $800, and when it's straight up $800, it's just not going to happen.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's a blow to Huawei. But again, I think, to be an optimist, like I try to be, right? Like at least you're gonna see a Huawei sign in a Best Buy, right?
Yeah,
they'll start to do this uphill battle of the brand recognition that they need. And at least they're here, right? And
I think us media folks are very fond of their products because they're very good, and so we're spreading the gospel in some ways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to mention it because I did 2 podcasts at CES, and somehow the Huawei AT&T thing did not come up. So now it's done. Moving on, I want to really quickly cover before we sign out. There's these Moto leaks. There's somebody leaked, maybe Evan Blass, I don't know. Somebody leaked the entire 2018 roadmap of Moto phones from Lenovo. And they look really interesting. I'm a big fan of Moto phones simply because I feel that they're offer a lot of bang for the buck. To me, phones that stood out in 2017 were the Moto Z2 Play. I did not like the Z2 Force at all. I felt that it was a poor effort for a high-end phone. But the Z2 Play hit the mark if you want Moto mods. The X4 was another one of my favorite, Android One. Really nice hardware for the money. And then, of course, the G5 series and the E4 stood out in their respective price points. So now we're seeing leaks of 3 phones, essentially the Z3 next generation Moto mod phone, the X5 next generation non-Moto high-end phone, non-mod high-end phone, and then the G6s, the next generation G phones. Have you had a look at this? Like, what's your takeaway? Like, I'm really I have a lot of questions, and I think a lot of people have a lot of questions. What is your take on this?
So, I mean, I've always been a fan of Motorola, if we're honest. So, like, I also am, like, looking forward to their phones. I think the Moto mod thing kind of pushed them into a corner that makes it very difficult for them to innovate on those devices. Because it has to have because they promised like the Moto mod will fit on all of these phones for the next X many years, right?
I think it's a cool challenge though.
It's a great challenge.
The size means you can make, with the bezel-less craze now, you can make some pretty awesome full screen phones in that form factor.
They just haven't yet. But to the point, this leak looks like they're finally doing that, which I think is great. Like, it's very hard for me to use a phone that doesn't have these like almost bezel-less things now, because so many companies have come out with them this year that anything else just feels dated. Right?
Oh yeah, I can't do a phone that's not 18.9 and has little bezels ananymore. That's it. I'm done. And I want even my mid-rangers. And this is what's exciting to me is that the G6 looks like it's a 18:9 display with a small bezel at the bottom with a fingerprint reader at the bottom.
Yep.
And everything else upgraded. The X5 looks like the most controversial one, and I want to talk about it last because of that. Normally I would put that in the middle because of the ordering of the hierarchy of Moto phones. So let's get the Z3 out of the way. The Z3 looks like an 18:9 edgeless, bezel-less display that curves around the edges a little bit like the Galaxies do.
Yeah, it does look that way.
And it doesn't look like there's a fingerprint reader anywhere. And we know it's not on the back since it's a Moto mod compatible device. And it doesn't look like it has some sort of face recognition system on the top. So my theory, and this is where it ties in with the Vivo phone from Semnat that I did a video of. Check it out in the show notes. The Vivo phone with the fingerprint reader in display from Synaptics that's under the OLED screen. I think that's what they're using. I mean, it's the only way. Right.
And and looking at the photos, because I'm looking at the same ones, right, like that were leaked. It doesn't seem like there's anywhere else to put anything, right? Because the Moto mods, where are you going to put your finger?
So and Z phones have always had OLED, so
yeah, true. So it would fit because you need the OLED to do this, right? I believe.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that's what they're going to do, which would be great.
Yeah, and the other thing is, do you see that bar at the bottom on the display? Yeah. There's like a graphical element, and instead of having the 3 Android buttons, has like this rectangular grayish bar that looks less wide, but similar to what we see on the iPhone 10 at the bottom.
Right.
So I'm wondering if they're kind of going to, and they've had gesture control on their fingerprint readers on all the phones this year. I'm wondering if they're going to kind of move to more of a gesture-based interface on their launcher and still give you the option, I hope, to fall back to the 3 buttons.
Yeah, I imagine they will. Like even even OnePlus and everybody, like whoever has their own buttons, they usually always give you that option for the.
But the X5 is really intriguing because the X5 doesn't have to adhere to the Moto Mod principle,
right?
But it's looks like a pretty high-end phone, and the X4 this year, spec-wise was mid-range, but fit and finish-wise was really high-end, I thought. And the X5 on that spy shot, leaked shot, whatever, has a notch at the top like the iPhone 10 with what clearly looks like some sort of face detection technology in a cluster up there.
Yep.
And then we could be wrong about that. It might not have face detection at all.
Right.
And it doesn't have any space for a fingerprint reader unless it's the logo in the back of the phone, which has a logo, the Moto logo in the back right below the camera. But I have a feeling it's probably using the same in-display tech that the Z3 is going to have under the display. And then maybe adding a face recognition thing, or maybe they're just doing the notch to do the notch and piss off Apple because, Apple's, it's become a bit like, the iconic look of the iPhone with the big bezel top and bottom and the home button at the bottom, was kind of like the ultimate icon to, like you could stylize it into an icon and recognize it as an iPhone.
Yeah, totally.
And now with the notch, you can stylize the iPhone 10 and it's clearly an iPhone 10, right? Even as a single icon. So, in a graphic on a website or something. So I'm wondering if they're going to vex Apple by doing this in a way, because they would have a notch too, but maybe the notch doesn't do anything. Maybe it's just relying on the in-screen fingerprint reader, and there's no Face ID. Maybe it's just a stereo camera up there for selfies or something.
Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, I mean, and looking at the photos and looking at what you're talking about, but like it's definitely a notch first off, and then it definitely has two cameras at least. And there's maybe, I don't know if that's the earpiece or if that's another couple of sensors. I don't know if it's going to be the facial recognition or if it'll just be like dual portrait mode because everybody wants that nowadays. But it also does have that same little bar at the bottom that we were talking about with the Z series. So like maybe it's got the fingerprint reader in the screen would be really cool. And
I really hope so.
I do too. I like that
really
concept.
Looking forward to that this year. I want to see a bunch of phones with.
And you used it with the Synaptics one, right? I didn't get a chance to get over there. Was it quick?
It was quick. You did have to kind of leave your finger on there for just a bit longer than it seemed at first, but I think it learns and it gets better. And it's just kind of magical to not have a dedicated piece of hardware for it anymore and just have this in the screen like that. It just it feels right. It finally feels like it should have always been that way. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna once this is commonplace, and I assume that eventually face recognition will become more commonplace even. But I think that for a while that there's going to be an interim where it's commonplace to have a fingerprint reader on the display, and we'll be like, I can't believe we had a separate thing that we had to tap on before. You know what I'm saying? Totally. And they could put multiple ones. Like the Synaptic system, you can have multiple of them on different parts of the screen. So.
Oh, that's interesting. I know that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I don't want to cut this short, but at the same time, we should wrap it up. It's been almost an hour and 15 minutes. I want to give you an opportunity to plug your channels and your ways and your things. Tell people where they can find you online. Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So the tech website, the blog is theunlockr.com. So it's the unlock, the letter R. Started 11 years ago. It was cool not to have an E at the end of your name. And then, of course, also the social networks are the same. They're the Unlock, the letter R, on Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, everything. So you can find me there.
Woohoo! You do Snapchat. You must have like teenagers following you. Yay! I admire people who do Snapchat because I don't get it. I still don't get it. I've tried several times and I'm like, I feel like a grandpa, grandma. Grandma Miriam
honestly,
doesn't get
the same though. It took me a while. if we're being honest. So
go check out David's stuff, folks, and I think it's going to be a pretty exciting year, judging from those Moto leaks. You know where to find me. I'm at TNKGRL. That's Tankerl, like the comic book character without the vowels. That's how you remember. My YouTube channel is just my full name, youtube.com/Miriam Jouar, Miriam with a Y. Go find me there. Remember that YouTube is just there for you to see the stuff we're talking about on the show. And then tell your friends about the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about the podcast and the YouTube channel. If you need to find the URL for the podcast, it's very simple. mobiletechpodcast.com. In one word, no spaces, no capitals, nothing. mobiletechpodcast.com. You'll find the RSS feed there. Also, I'm on iTunes. I'm on Pocket Casts. Yeah, that's it. So you'll find us everywhere. And I say us because, I always have some wonderful people like David on. Thanks for being on, David.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
All right. Stay tuned for next week, folks. Another one. And cheers.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.